Sure Hao refuses to join Bulo Mountain, completely igniting Qin Wu's anger. Mortal, being an enemy of God will end sadly. Qin Wu's aged face flashes with ferocity. He will use the method of sacrificing his own blood essence to completely suppress Sure Hao. With the blood into the ancient battlefield, it turns into a vast ocean, covering the sky and the earth, slaps towards Sure Hao. Sure Hao stands upright, glaring at the rolling torrent coming towards his face. There is no fear in his eyes, but in his heart, he becomes more and more determined to overthrow the Bulo Mountain. Qin Hao on the side is frightened by the sight in front of him. Stares blankly at the surging waves, a little overwhelmed. He doesn't want to believe that in order to deal with Sure Hao, ancestor of Bulo Mountain doesn't even care about his life. Bang bang. The huge waves fall, hitting the ground with a loud sound. The powerful force shakes the entire ancient battlefield. In an instant, the space where Sure Hao and Qin Hao are located is submerged by water. The dim visibility reveals a strong depression. Everything is surrounded by the sea, boundless, no end in sight. This round of water is transformed by Qin Wu's blood, and the sea contains the will of God. Qin Hao cannot resist such miracles. Consciousness falls into confusion, may faint at any time. Sure Hao helps in time to avoid Qin Hao's fate of being washed away. He puts one arm of his brother on shoulder, wanting to send Qin Hao out of this water first. Right at this moment, Sure Hao feels the cold air rise from his back. A suffocating sense of oppression shocks him. This is a dragon with a body length of several hundred meters, and its entire body is blue. Huge eyes like two lampposts. This deep-sea secluded dragon is also a beast summoned by Qin Wu. With extraordinary combat power and extremely violent and ferocious temperament, in the waters, few beasts can compete with it. A fairy-like valley in Bulo Mountain. Sure Xiling and Qin Yining pass through the space crack and see what happens to Sure Hao. The two are shocked and shouted for their son, because Qin Wu used divine power many times. The spatial order of Bulo Mountain has been disturbed, and some of the rules of Magic Circle have been weakened. This opens a crack in the barrier that seals the Sure Xiling couple. Sure Xiling's eyes are cold, and with a loud roar, his whole body erupts with fighting intent. Now that his two sons are in trouble, how could he not be in a hurry? Shizzling drums, the energy of the whole body gathers into the spear. The spear body flashes a dazzling cold light, and at the same time there is a violent thunder and lightning around it. He waves the silver spear in his hand and stabs the crack in the space. The silver spear hits the barrier and a clanging sound erupts, accompanied by sparks splashing. Although Shizzling has extraordinary combat power, it is unable to resist the power of the gods. After a few ripples appear in the space crack, there is no response. Sure Xiling is unwilling to give up. He attacks the barrier like a madman. At this moment, the love for his son that he had accumulated for more than 10 years breaks out completely. His eyes are scarlet, like a demon, but no matter how he bombards, it is still difficult to widen the crack in the enchantment. On Sure Hao's side, when the giant dragon appears, he senses the existence of this giant beast. This dragon's breath is really scary, but it doesn't make him afraid. Sure Hao once put the ancient demon spider on the barbecue and stewed soup with pure blood beasts. An ancient flood dragon, in Sure Hao's eyes, is nothing but a great supplement. The giant dragon's eyes are like torches, and it locks onto Sure Hao. It opens its bloody mouth, exposing its sharp fangs. A mighty golden glow gathers between its throat. Giant dragon wants to kill Sure Hao before he could react. Sure Hao holds Qin Hao, his figure suddenly flashes. The huge pressure of the seawater makes Sure Hao's movements a little slow. With the powerful explosive power of his body, he takes Qin Hao to avoid the giant dragon's blow. Without stopping at all, Sure Hao pushes with his left hand. A soft force pushes Qin Hao aside. He wants to face this behemoth alone. The dragon twists its giant body and attacks Sure Hao again. The big mouth of the blood basin is opened again. Like a big net covering the sky, there is no way to avoid it. On the periphery of the battlefield, Qin Wu looks at this scene sarcastically. Sure Hao's figure is so weak compared to the giant dragon, plus the limitations of the deep sea. In Qin Wu's view, Sure Hao is already a dead man. When the giant flood dragon is only a few meters away from Sure Hao's mother Qin Yining screams in shock, her beautiful face showing despair. With blood and tears in Sure Xiling's eyes, he bombards the barrier more and more frantically. But the next second, the anxiety and despair on their faces suddenly froze. Looking suspiciously at the space crack in front of him, this giant dragon seems to be restrained by some force, and it is fixed in place and cannot move even a little bit. No matter how hard the giant dragon struggles, it can't break free. This is the imprisoning power of Sure Hao's 10 cave. When the giant flood dragon attacks and kills him, he has already opened the 10 cave. Sure Hao's eyes are like divine lightning, and his anger is like a substantive divine flame that surrounds his body. His body slowly floats up, and the golden light shoots out from his chest. A strand of divine power floats out from the supreme bone, entangling the giant dragon. Immediately, the majestic vitality on the dragon's body seems to be pulled. begins to follow these golden silk sash, gurgling into Shi Hao's body. Qin Wu's face is stunned. He has investigated Shi Hao's information before. Knowing that Shi Hao's Supreme Bone has not recovered, never thought that Shi Hao could not only use the power of the Supreme Bone, but using this power to sacrifice his giant dragon alive. In a short time, the huge body of this giant dragon quickly withers down. Its vast vitality eventually turns into the nutrients of the Supreme Bone. However, the Supreme Bone in Shi Hao's chest does not clam down. It is like a black hole, continuously sucking the surrounding ocean into the body. This water area is transformed by Qin Wu's blood, and contains unimaginable vitality. Shi Hao's Supreme Bone is like the center of a tsunami, greedily absorbing this vast ocean. Seeing his blood essence being refined by Shi Hao, Qin Wu can't keep his immortal temperament no longer, and his face is full of rage. A mortal man who has repeatedly challenged the majesty of God, accept God's punishment. After speaking, Qin Wu's arm twitches hard. He tears a crack in the void and enters the ancient battlefield where Shi Hao is. He wants to teach this ignorant young man a lesson with his own hands. Qin Wu stands in the air, staring at Shi Hao. When he appears, the space begins to tremble violently. The power of heaven and earth seem to be summoned, pouring into Qin Wu's body from all directions. Qin Wu's eyes are unruly. He is like the master of the ancient battlefield, accepts the surrender and worship of this space. The powerful divine power makes Shi Hao feel the oppression from his soul. Humble God, as small as you, dare to yell at me? Shi Hao's eyes are like torches, and he responds tit for tat. Withstands the overwhelming pressure. He's straight, doesn't back down. Bulo Mountain's aggressiveness makes Shi Hao unwilling to be merciful. This time, he summons Broken Sword, and secretly transmits the small tower, at the expense of the treasure house of the Stone Country. Ask the small tower for help. He knows that the only power that can resist divine power is divine power. If he wants to kill Qin Wu, he needs to use the power of small tower. Shi Hao collapses his breath and restrains his fighting spirit. He concentrates his whole body on the broken sword. At the same time, a chaotic aura floats out from the small tower. Attaches to the broken sword. Rumbling, majestic sword intent spreads from broken sword. The powerful force distorts the entire ancient battlefield space, and the boundary begins to shatter. Qin Wu feels something in his heart, and looks at Shi Hao with unbelievable eyes. As a god, he feels threatened by this sword intent. Shi Hao ignores Qin Wu's reaction. Holding the sword with one hand, the sword will be surging to the extreme. At the same time, he secretly cast the grass sword kill. With Shi Hao's sword slashing down, the golden sword light is wrapped in the chaotic power, such as flash floods, such as tsunamis. He storms Qin Wu with the power of beheading gods and killing Buddhas. Qin Wu's face changes greatly. God's intuition makes him smell the extreme danger. He hastily mobilized his will and built a defensive barrier in front of him. Bang, with a dull sound, the sword light hits Qin Wu's shield. In Qin Wu's unbelievable eyes, the protective shield that he condenses with divine will begins to grow cracks. With the continuous impact of the sword light, cracks begins to grow and expand. Finally, the protective cover cannot resist this domineering sword intent. Shattered, the sword light that penetrates the barrier slashes directly on Qin Wu's arm. Then the sword light penetrates Qin Wu's arm again, and finally falls into the heaven. The next second, Qin Wu's mournful wailing sounds. One of his arms is cut off, blood stains the sky. Qin Wu's face is pale, and he tightly covers the wound on his broken arm. The shrewd face has lost the ease of the past, and replaces it with fear and awe. From the sword intent just now, he feels the power of chaos. Reaching the level of Qin Wu, he naturally knows the terrifying power of chaos. Qin Wu searches carefully and sees the small tower beside Shi Hao. Qin Wu's weak face turns gray. He knows something about the small tower's past, knows that this is a big killer from ancient times. Shi Hao moves on. Cutting off Qin Wu's arm does not satisfy him. His supreme bone urges again. A golden aura floats out from his chest and wraps around Qin Wu's broken arm. Shi Hao wants to absorb the life force of his arm in front of Qin Wu. Refine this god's arm into the nourishment of his supreme bone. Qin Wu's face is ashen. Seeing that the vitality of his arm is rapidly dissipating, it flows into Shi Hao's body. Shame and fear rise in Qin Wu's heart at the same time, making his old face extremely complicated. In the end, the survival instinct prevails. At this moment, he can't care about the pride of the strong, also removes the dignity of the gods. Without any hesitation, Qin Wu turns around and flees. The power of the small tower is definitely not something he can compete with. He wants to wake up the sleeping Five Elements mountain. Shi Xiling and Qin Yining pass through the crack in space and see Shi Hao's sword slaying the gods. Excited tears roll down the cheeks. Their son, who almost died, has now grown to such a powerful point.